All right, y'all. Part two. Let's do it. So yeah, I was talking about Rappers Delight and versus the Caz version. Caz did spit a version of his own because they had taken his rhymes. Or Big Bang Hank. Big Bang Hank had taken his rhymes and made it into a song. And of course, people back then who were hip hop heads, there weren't that many, but the ones in the Bronx who invented the shit and were, really sort of doing it at a high level, at the highest level that it was at that time, were looking at Rappers Delight like, what is this shit? Like, this ain't hip hop. This is not what we do. And that's when you think about it, the first major hip hop record on, basically to get out was Rapper's Delight. And it's kind of a pop record, which I think is interesting because it does have that eternal pop versus hip hop debate was there even back then, right? And you can see the people that gravitated towards Rapper's Delight for the most part don't listen to hip hop, don't care about it, probably thought it was a fad, were into it at the time, but they were never people that were serious listeners. They didn't know who Kaz was and they didn't care. Even if you told them, oh, this came from Kaz, they'd be like, who cares? Right? And that's pop. That's how pop thinks and that's how pop operates. Okay. Now, lastly, I want to cover on that whole song is that you can tell the difference if you listen to the Kaz version, you listen to the Rapper's Delight version, right? Kaz's version is just like more aggressive, just in terms of how he's rapping. There's some a little bit of sort of cutting or scratching, you would say, to a certain degree. The snare is harder. It's harder. It's a harder record. That's a hip hop record. That's the difference. That's a banger. Rappers Delight, not so much. Okay, but again, I got some notes. I'm gonna help you guys through this because this is actually a little bit more complex, like I said, than I thought. So, I look at my notes here. My question to you was, if you were to say what's a banger, right? It would be Old Town Road versus Look Alive with Drake and Block Boy. Would it be Sicko Mode versus Hot by Young Thug, right? Would it be Dior by Pop Smoke? Would it be Welcome to the Party by Pop Smoke? Which of all these are bangers? Well, I think this is my time to explain to you. I'll come back to that question. But let's go through sort of some history here and why it might be confusing. I am 35. So I've been clubbing since I was 18, at least going out. So that's what, 2002, basically, was when I started like really going out. And I remember, man, the joint they used to kill at the club was Nothin by NORE. I don't know if y'all remember that record. Homeboy, I came to party. That shit was the hottest record in the club at one point. Okay, that was the hottest record probably in hip hop, or one of the hottest records in hip hop at that time. But what's interesting is that, let me see if I got my notes here. Nothin, I think, didn't really. It peaked at like number 37 on Billboard. That's not very high, considering how, like, I'm telling you that you went to New York, you heard it. You were in Toronto, you were wherever in Canada, you heard that shit. If you went to hip hop venues, you heard that motherfucking song. You know what that song was about. And I'm sure that at that time, I'm trying to see what my list here, what tells me about 2002. I mean, the hottest songs in 2002 were like Nickelback and shit. Like, I mean, come on, man. It's pop. Pop music and hip hop at that time weren't like merged. They were merging, but they weren't like merged together, which is why I think some of y'all have a hard time listening and telling the difference. But my whole point is this: I was going out, I was partying a lot, right? Because, when you're a hip hop head, you go to hip hop venues, you go to hip hop spots, you hear stuff. This is also back in the day when DJs, for the most part, were real DJs. So they played their own records. They just played whatever they thought was hot. They weren't necessarily playing playlist or like basically like this is what's the hot song on the radio. So insert play it. And I think that's where some of y'all get confused because I would go out like for example when I lived in Montreal, I would go to hip hop venues and it'd be people my age. Like I was in my 20s at the time, maybe early 20s. I would go out to these venues and the DJs would be playing everything from Snoop to Big L to Foreign Exchange to Donnell Jones, whatever. And the first time I ever heard Big L, the Big Picture intro, it's a song, you can look it up. The first time I ever heard that song was in a lounge. girls dancing, everything. And that shit goes. It's an energetic record. It's fun to listen to. It's fun to dance to. So my perception of what is a danceable record isn't just what's club ready. It's what's a hip hop record that's enjoyable. Period. That's how I look at it. It's an energy thing. It's a charisma thing. It's a like if this artist was doing a set list for a show and wanted to get the hip hop audience hyped up as fuck, what is this person going to play that's going to make sure that make people go, oh, I love that show? And the Big L picture intro is one of Big L's best songs. It just is, right? It's lyrical. That doesn't mean that you can't play it. Now, would you play Big L picture intro right now in 2020 in an audience of 19-year-olds? Of course not, because they don't get it. Like, it's before their time, right? That doesn't mean that the song isn't classic. They might get it, actually. You never know. Because, for example, I was in B-More the other day, and I was listening to Ray J's Wait a Minute. If y'all ever hear that record, Wait a Minute. Hey, hey, that shit was fire. I love that song back then. I love that song the moment it came out in like 2000. And I was in high school at the time. And when I tell you that I was at the spot in B-More, and these kids who are at least 10 to 15 years younger than me was dancing all crazy and loving that shit, the DJ put it on right in the middle of their trap set or whatever. That's a banger. I mean, those are classic joints. That's why we call them classics. They were hot then in terms of they were just great songs. And I don't even think that song was like a huge Billboard hit either, right? Like, it was just a dope song. It was dope then, it's dope now because great producers make lasting beats. And the Neptunes are definitely one of the greatest producers. So, this is my point, right? Like, a banger is just that feeling. It's a song with feeling. That's really what it is, right? It's a song where everything comes together. It's memorable. It has feeling. It's something that makes you just want to move. It makes the spirit lifts the spirit on some level. I mean, it can be a dance record where like more dancey type of thing. It could be something that's just like, yo, this is so fucking hard and like I love this shit. And it comes on and you just like on some, Glaciers of Ice or Ice Water, right? Raekwon, that's a banger. Okay, you play that in hip hop sets with hip hop folk, they're gonna fucking love that shit. Okay, like it's not for Vanessa Carlton ass motherfuckers. Okay, you're not playing this at your typical party. You're not even playing it at your typical black party. You know what I'm saying? Like you're playing this for hip hop fans. Okay, hip hop dudes, hip hop girls, they know that song. They at least like that song. They gonna love it, and that's my point. Those are the bangers. Okay, I grew up listening to that shit. If you don't go outside, you are not going to know what's hot. That's some of the problems to a certain degree with some of y'all new niggas, right? Is that y'all stay on the internet and you're not out. Like, you gotta go out. You gotta be active. You gotta be taking in what people are listening to, like how they're moving. Because stuff I'm telling you is actually very common sense once you go out. Once you're actually partying, you're seeing how people are operating, you're having fun interacting with people, you'll know right away, oh, that shit is a banger. That's kind of not really a banger. You know what I mean? Or that's just the song that's hot right now, but it's gonna fade. You just kind of know after a while. And to get back to what I was experiencing back in the day, in the mid 2000s, I was out. Like again, I heard Star Wars. There's a song called Star Wars by Nas. I heard Star Wars for the very first time at a club. I had never heard that song. It had just come out. And again, this was back in the day where DJs would get like the CD or vinyl, like before it was really officially a single, or if it was an officially single, it would get sent to DJs first. So you wouldn't even sort of have the record until like it came out officially or whatever. And DJs would, if they liked it, they played it. If they didn't like it, they didn't play it. And I remember being in the club and the DJ put on Star Wars, and I went, whoa, what the fuck is this? This is a Nas record? And I went up to the dude and was like, what the fuck is this? And he was like, oh, it's a Nas record. It just came out. And I was like, yo, this shit is crazy. And then when it turned out to be on the Illmatic best of, 10 years or something like that. And then when I came out, I bought it. And actually, that DJ that I'm talking about ended up being a guy named Grand Theft, who ended up having a big single back in the day called Rain of Fire. A Jewish dude, actually, I think. And he's, he DJ'd for Paris Hilton and stuff like that. So shout out to that dude if he ever watches this video. Like, it was different back then, man. Like, you would hear hip hop. you'd go out and there were hip hop spots. That's why this stuff is a little hard to understand now, because there are no hip hop spots anymore. There's just places and everyone plays hip hop. But the reality is, really, everyone plays top 40 music. That's really the truth. And hip hop and top 40 are the same thing now. So you go out, you just hear pop music everywhere. And you think, oh yeah, everyone likes hip hop. Nah, B, they like top 40 music. And hip hop is pop now. So they like pop. A lot of the stuff that y'all talk about is like being dope, and it's pop music 100%. It's made like pop. It's non-threatening. It doesn't have an aggressive beat, aggressive delivery. It's pop music. It's the beat's not all that weird. That's what casuals like. They don't like shit that's too weird. Hip hop is built on being weird. That's what made it cool. That's what gave it its edge. That's what made it raw. It was raw and funky, right? And so I go back to my notes and I tell you, this stuff is easier when you can experience it. And I think maybe to a certain degree, why y'all have a bit of a hard time differentiating the difference is that you're not going to hip hop spots, and there are no hip hop spots anymore, unfortunately. Like in Montreal, as I'm talking about, there's a spot I used to go to called Blue Dog back in the day, in the mid 2000s, early to mid 2000s. That was the hip hop spot for heads, and you would go there and they played Pump Pump, Snoop, and 93 to Infinity, and Incarcerated Scarface, and Criminology, and all of these fucking records, and people would lose their fucking minds. And a lot of times, some of those were the first times I ever heard those songs. And I'm going like, damn, this shit is shaking up the place and people are loving it and stuff, because those are classic records and they still rocked at that time even. And they were like a good 10 years, after they'd come out. So if you are kind of at home listening to Illmatic in your headphones, you're probably not realizing that these were party records that people loved back then, or at least some people, at least hip hop heads loved. And they work as party music. Even when you're being lyrical and all that shit, they were party music. Raw, RAW, that's a party record, right? Like, if your shit don't got that energy that makes people go, ugh, it's not a banger, okay? When I listen to Never Ends by Nas, right, that Alchemist record that I told you was trash, that shit is trash. It has no energy. The beat comes on, wah, 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 whatever that bullshit beat was, and Nas is just rapping. It doesn't do anything for you. You know what I'm saying? Like, those records are horrible. But when you hear, Skamale, know when I'm set, no, you know what I'm saying? You gotta love it. You automatically, I'm like, oh shit, that's a banger. Okay? Stroke of Death, you know? Like, you hear Stroke of Death on Ghostface. That's not a club record. You're not gonna hear it at the club. But if you played, wrong Ghostface fans, you play the wrong hip hop heads, Solomon Childs for life, for living the life, thug for life, forever I'm the kid, 89 stick up kid, king of New York, regulation party. You're gonna be like, oh shit, because it gets that energy, man. That's hip hop. It's energy. It's break dances. You know what I'm saying? It's raw. Anyway, let me wrap this up because I've been, talking. But in answer to your question, or my question, I should say, what's a banger? Well, I look at these lists, right? I look at Old Town Road, not a banger. Okay, it's a pop song. It's a decent pop song. It's actually a pretty good pop song, all things considered, because that's pop music. It brings everyone together. It's not threatening. It's just, I'm on Old Town Road, and you sing along and you forget about it, right? Like, it's a pretty good pop song, all things considered. It's not a hip hop song. You're not gonna hear Lil Nas X at hip hop sets and among hip hop audiences. That's not a banger. We don't care about that. It has nothing to do with chart performance. It has everything to do with songs that stick to the hip hop core.